developments on the 2G scam investigation. These are our top stories at this hour. A routine income tax inquiry into Swan Telecom as far as 2008 has stumbled onto several concerns raised by the CAG. The IT official who was handling Swan's tax returns found the company was virtually formed overnight. Reliance ADA responds to NDTV's investigation, says neither Rcom nor the ADAG group, individual or company has benefited from the Swan license. And the ex-IT official who started the initial inquiries against Swan plans to go to the Central Vigilance Commission or the CVC to make sure that the investigations are indeed taken to their logical conclusion. Let's bring you all those details then. In its detailed report on the 2G scam, here is exactly the kind of information that came in on that CAG report. Let's run you through it, actually, point by coming here right now. Take a look at this. It had very strong words, remember, against Swan Telecom in that report, the CAG did, and whose chief, in fact, Shahid Balwa, is currently under arrest. In fact, the report called it a front company for the Reliance Telecom. Swan is one of the 9 companies that got 2G spectrum at dirt cheap prices in 2008, and then it sold that stake for a premium. That it's an overnight operator was also said, and also, in fact, it was denied that it was proxy holding for Reliance ADAG Group. There are details of how a routine income tax inquiry into Swan as far back as 2008, 2 years before the CAG report, stumbled onto many of the same concerns that were later raised by the CAG. Swan's tax returns found that a company was virtually formed overnight, in whose bank accounts crores of rupees moved in and out on the same day. A company which until June 2007, just 3 months before the deadline expired for submitting the applications for a telecom license, had virtually 0 rupees in its bank account. The documents that came before the tax authorities help understand the origins of Swan Telecom and its close links to the Reliance ADAG Group from the day of its inception. Now, the tax officer, of course, says that he could have probed deeper, but before that could happen, the case was transferred out of his jurisdiction. Well, he now says that he will submit the evidence that he has to the CVC, evidence that he hopes will fill in the blanks in many unanswered questions that lie at the very heart of that 2G controversy. An NDTV exclusive then, the income tax investigation into Swan Telecom that 3 years ago came close to exposing the truth behind the company. Was it a serious player or a fly-by-night operator? And what was its links to the Reliance ADAG Group?
A full 3 years before Shahid Balwa, the chief of Swan Telecom, was arrested on the suspicion of corruption in the 2G scam. A full 3 years before the CBI questioned Anil Ambani, the Swan Telecom was a front for his company Reliance Communications and therefore an indirect beneficiary of cheap 2G licenses. As far back as in 2008, income tax officials in Mumbai, as a part of routine audit of Swan Telecom's finances, stumbled onto many of the questions that today are central to the investigations into Swan Telecom. KP Nigam was the income tax officer in charge of inspecting Swan's balance sheets. He sent his first notice to Swan in September 2008. By then, Swan had sold 45% stake to Etisalat of UAE for $900 million, a massive profit for a license purchased for 1,650 crore rupees, a transaction that the Comptroller and Auditor General had questioned. KP Nigam, who took voluntary retirement from the Income Tax Department last year, was not so concerned with the Etisalat sale. It was Swan's finances that raised many questions.
I found that there are a number of big transactions running into crores, just coming in, going out from the bank accounts. So as an income tax authority, I was bound to go to the substance of those transactions.
On the basis of his doubts, he sent a series of notices to Swan Telecom with queries about the price at which Reliance Communications had bought a stake in Swan, Swan's agreement with Reliance Communications to buy infrastructure, and more in-depth details of Swan's shareholdings.
The document submitted by Swan itself reveals a very hasty origin of Swan Telecom, a company created out of nowhere, becoming a serious bidder and eventually owner of an All India Telecom license, and how closely were its ties with Reliance Dhirubhai Ambani Group. Remember, to get an eligible license, one company cannot hold more than 10% stake in another telecom company in the same circle.
Swan Telecom was originally Swan Capital, registered on 13 July 2006 as a Reliance ADAG company. But when Swan Capital became Swan Telecom, Swan's company secretary Hari Nair wrote a letter dated 1st February 2007, which states that the majority stakeholder in Swan is Tiger Traders Private Limited and that neither Reliance ADA Group nor Anil Ambani nor his family hold any shares in Tiger Traders. In other words, Tiger Traders and not Reliance ADA Group is the real owner of Swan. But this is Swan Telecom's Memorandum of Association. It says that Swan Telecom held a general body meeting on 7th February, a week after Mr. Nair's certification, to become a telecom company. The subscribers of the new company are still the old ones. Out of the three, two are based at the same address, Reliance Energy Centre, Santa Cruz East, Mumbai. One is called Power Surfer Interactive Private Limited and the other is Reliance Energy Management Services Limited. A month later, the newly formed Swan Telecom opens two bank accounts on 1st March 2007, exactly one day before it applies for a telecom license. One in HDFC Bank and the other in ICICI Bank, both in Mumbai. For opening its account in HDFC Bank, a letter is sent to the bank by Reliance Communications on its letterhead, which states that Swan Telecom is a group company of Reliance Communications.
Exactly a day later, on the day Swan formally applied for 2G licenses, monies were transferred into Swan's account so that it could meet the minimum criteria pertaining to bank balance required for getting a 2G license.
On 2nd March 2007, the day Swan applies for a license, 974 crore rupees were transferred into Swan's HDFC account from Reliance Communications. Swan is still short. On the same date, 95 crore rupees was transferred into its ICICI Bank account from Tiger Traders. The total takes Swan about 1,030 required crores in its bank balance.
Both these transactions are known. 974 crores for Reliance ADAG's preference shares in Swan, while 95 crores for Tiger Traders' 90.13% majority stake.
Except what is not known is that on the same day, 2nd March, the 974 crore rupees was transferred out of Swan Telecom's HDFC account back to Reliance Communications.
If DOT had bothered to check Swan's account even a day later on 3rd of March, they would have found that the account had zero money. However, it was enough for Swan to show that statement for a day before the money was transferred out. Even so, Swan had to give a reason on why it returned the money to Reliance Communication, and that too on the same day.
This it did by signing an agreement where Swan agreed to buy telecom infrastructure from Reliance Communications. Except the agreement between the two companies is signed on 1st March, on the day when Swan had just opened its bank accounts and had not even applied for a telecom license. Even though the 974 crore rupees were returned, the Swan-Reliance Communication relationship did not end there. For the next 2 months, up to June 2007, Reliance Communications, using the same account number 060031001874, in a series of transactions, remits a total of 900 crore rupees into Swan's HDFC bank accounts, all of which is taken out on the same day. On 22nd May, Reliance Communications transfers 700 crore rupees to Swan, which exits the account into a company called Vikata Engineer. 22nd June, Reliance Communications transfers 10 crore rupees to Swan, which exits the same day to Swan Consultants. On 27 June, Reliance Communications transfers 90 crore rupees, exits the same day again to Swan Consultants. This is the only activity in Swan's account. Its balance is otherwise zero or in negatives. With just 3 months left before the October 2007 deadline for 2G license applications, Swan had nothing to show in its bank balance. As the Income Tax Department probed deeper, they asked for details of Tiger Traders, the majority stakeholder in Swan. The ICICI bank statements of Tiger Traders for up to 24th March 2007 show that its registered address is Reliance Energy, 3rd floor, Santa Cruz, Mumbai. to go back to the undertaking given by Swan's company secretary that Reliance has nothing to do with Tiger Traders.
The income tax department had nothing to do about Swan's eligibility for a license, but then they say even a cursory glance at Swan's books raised doubts about its finances.
On 8 July 2009, KP Nigam sent a more detailed notice to Swan, asking how Swan sold 99 lakh preference shares with a face value of 1 rupee to Reliance Telecom for 1,000 rupees. In other words, at a massive premium of 999 rupees for a share, given that the company has not carried out any business activity before these shares were issued. A query that came very close to the central questions of the telecom scam. The same question would be asked by the Comptroller and Auditor General a year later when in its report it said that the discrepancy in value of Reliance Telecom's shares raises doubts about the intention of Reliance Telecom and the control it would exercise in a new company incorporated a few months ago. But before Swan could reply, barely a week later, on 15 July, the case was transferred out of KP Nigam's jurisdiction, citing reasons that the address of the company had changed. KP Nigam wrote a letter of protest saying that it's against the rules.
Yeah, I objected to transfer that. If it is to be transferred, the SSE can raise the objection within 1 month from the issue of notice under section 142(1) as per the law. So if it is to be transferred, it has to be